All right, I'm excited today to walk everybody through the latest and greatest version of Cool Calc. We spent the last 2 years developing not only this next generation manual J tool that I'm going to show you, but also manual S and D, which I'll cover in additional videos. I'm going to walk through a basic project from start to finish and highlight some of the improvements and changes we've made based on user feedback over the last couple of years. The first screen is the project screen, the project list screen. Some of the things that we've added here based on user feedback, a search field was something that a lot of people that did high volume of projects asked for, so we added that capability. We also added the ability to now belong to multiple teams or organizations. So prior, one of the benefits of Cool Calc was always around collaboration and being able to share projects within a single organization. But we've got many organizations that maybe have multiple divisions or franchises that are handled separately, or people that just want to collaborate outside of their particular organization. It could be a contractor wanting to collaborate with an engineer or an architect or a trainer or even somebody within the Cool Calc team. So we now have the ability to belong to multiple organizations and collaborate both within and outside of an organization and use this invite field to invite somebody to a project. When you create a new project, the screen to do so looks fairly similar to what we did before. We just simplified a lot of areas. So you enter a project name just as you did before, and you enter an address just as you did before. We do validate the addresses just like we did always against Google Places. You can select a valid address. One of the things that we eliminated because it was just causing confusion was the city and state field. They were read-only in the previous application anyway, and people often would create tickets and say, how come I can't type in the city and state field? So we just decided to get rid of them. If the address doesn't exist, just like the previous application, minimum we need you to type here is city and state, and we'll be able to at least pull up the appropriate weather station, which is what you see on the right here. In the legacy version of Cool Calc, we glossed over weather stations very quickly. It was something that sort of happened behind the scenes. We would select the closest one, and you had to go sort of digging if you wanted to modify it. We thought we were saving time, but in reality, it was just creating more confusion and tickets on our end. So we decided to make it front and center. We show you exactly what we're doing. We pick the closest weather station. You can select a different one if that's more applicable. You can override the design temps just as you always could. We try to give you transparency around why we're selecting these design temps and what they mean. When we do put these design temps, they're supposed to eliminate 1% of extremes over a 5-year period, and we call that out here. So typical cases when you'd want to override them would be if the building inspector or local code has a different temperature that you want to use. We also added altitude as a read-only field. This was something that our users asked for, especially ones in high altitude areas, because there could be quite a big difference in altitude between weather stations, and oftentimes that was more important in those areas than getting the exact temperature right, which you could override anyway. So we did add that altitude reference there. Just like the previous application, the entire flow is designed to guide you through the process from start to finish. We really tried for this tool to be a low touch, no touch experience, meaning anyone should be able to create a project and get from start to finish with minimal training and or support. A lot of effort goes into creating this application in that way. We always say it's very easy to make something difficult, very difficult to make something easy. So to go through the project, you just want to follow the prompts. If I click the proceed button, I'm going to be brought to the next step. This is a little different from the previous version of Cool Calc. With Cool Calc before, we were broken up into 4 sections: project info, construction, dimensions, and HVAC systems. So HVAC systems came at the end. It was something that you created one or more systems and then assigned them to your various rooms. We decided to switch things and add that at the beginning. So this isn't necessarily a new screen, just the order at which it appears is new. We did that for several reasons. One, we got a lot of tickets because that was the only part of the application that wasn't guided in the old legacy version. And it wasn't always intuitive how people would have to navigate back to add a second system if they did want to have more than one system in a house, which can be fairly common. The other reason we did it is because we can be more intuitive around the screens downstream of this, particularly the dimensions and drawing tools. And when we get into things like duct design, if we know the type of system somebody is intending to design around up front, we can make sure that we don't overly complicate the user interfaces with icons and things that are not applicable to the system that somebody's trying to create. So if you're trying to create a boiler design around an HVAC system, you may need things like baseboards, radiators, radiant flooring inputs. If you're trying to do a ductless system, you're not going to need a lot of tools around ductwork drawing. So if we tried to have one tool that catered to everything, it complicates the UI, and this allows us to be a little simpler. So you can create any number of systems here. A system should really be defined by the outdoor condensing unit. So if it's a multi-zone mini split, you don't go by the indoor heads, you go by the number of outdoor units. Usually the condenser is the component that is used to identify the quantity of systems. And these would be the ones that you're looking to necessarily design today. If you're only looking to replace one system in the house, and there are multiple systems, that you only have to enter one here. This is how many you're intending to design. When you click configure, we ask you to give the system a name, just like we did before. Anything identifiable is fine. I can call this basement system. And then we ask you to select the type of system. Right now there's three choices: a split system, that's where you have an outdoor condensing unit, and an indoor could be furnace, fan coil, dual fuel system. Anything that's a ducted split with two components would fall under that category. Furnace only is fairly self-explanatory. Ductless mini split, this could be single zone or multi-zone systems, and nowadays you can have mixed ducted and ductless systems. Those would also fall under ductless mini splits. We are going to be adding boiler only and package units within the next couple weeks. They're just not live yet in this staging environment. When I click next, it's going to proceed to the next system. I said that there was two systems, so it's going to loop me through those two systems, and then I can pick the appropriate type there. You can always go back and add additional ones. You can always go back and change these, but we do ask you to at least have an idea of what you're trying to design up front. Click proceed, and this screen is somewhat changed. We used to have two screens that had you enter dwelling information and then the construction profile. We've combined those two screens into one, and we've simplified a lot of the language on those screens based on user feedback and tickets that we got. Number of above grade stories, that input hasn't changed. This one has. We used to have an input called primary ceiling type that confused a lot of people. Now we just ask, is there an unconditioned attic space? Yes or no. If yes, toggle that yes. We used to have inputs or drop downs that asked if the attic was unencapsulated or encapsulated. People didn't know what the term encapsulated meant, so we tried to add images now, where unencapsulated means the insulation is on the floor of the attic, where encapsulated means it's on the roof of the attic. So you just select the appropriate type there. We used to have an input called primary floor type. Now it's a lot more intuitive. It's the foundation type of the house. Is it a basement, crawl space, slab? What is the primary wall type? Most houses are probably going to be just wood frame construction. How many fireplaces there are, and the year that the house was built. That's not a new input, but this is. We now are transparent around the code that we're selecting based on the year entered. So we maintain a pretty robust database going all the way back to when the first energy codes were adopted in the US, which is around 1983, and we automatically try to select the appropriate energy code based on when that state where this project is located adopted that code. So this house is in Massachusetts. It was built in 2022. At that point, they had adopted the IECC 2018 code. We do give sometimes additional codes just in case something was built above code. We usually assume that things aren't going to be built not to code. We usually assume that they're going to be built to or above code. So in this case, I'm just going to say it was built to code, and then I'm going to proceed. This part's definitely an improvement. Prior to this version, we would default some of the ceiling U values in R values and window U values. Now we default almost everything, and we look at exactly what code required for every type of wall, whether it's an above grade wall, a below grade wall, a partition wall, which is something that is not an outside wall but separates unconditioned space like a garage, all the various types of floors. We automatically create, because code sometimes has different requirements for ceilings under an attic versus vaulted or cathedral ceilings. So we create both just in case you're going to use either one in the project. They're already set to go. We separate windows and glass doors now. This is something that wasn't always intuitive to people. ACCA considers any door that's more than 50% glass a window, not a door. We thought it wasn't very intuitive to call a French door, a sliding glass door, a window. So we still keep them under windows, but we separated them to show various glass doors. And we also moved the ductwork leakage and R value under construction groups. Before this was done way down under HVAC systems. We feel that this is something that we can easily default based on code. So it should fall under this construction group area. And infiltration, we eliminated a screen and brought that under construction groups as well. Same exact format as it was before, but the intention is that we would default leakage rates based on required air changes an hour for code. Most of the time, you don't have to do anything on this screen. The instances where you're gonna want to do that is when you have maybe part of the house that was original and part that's an addition, so they were built at two very different times and required two very different insulation values. You would want to come in and maybe add a new above grade wall, and you name one original wall and another one addition walls. Same thing with windows. If maybe half of the house had renovated windows, you may want to put original windows, renovated windows with different U values. If you do want to edit our defaults for any reason, you can click them. You can hit this little edit icon, and you'll see a couple things that we've done here. We are transparent now. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a note that says IECC 2018 building code required a U value of 0.06 or lower. So the program defaulted to the closest one in the manual J book. That's 0.059. If you tried to override these and say put no board insulation, you're going to get a warning if the U value is not to code that says, hey, you're trying to select something that doesn't meet code. This is what code requires. You can still do it. Nothing's going to stop you from doing it, but we try to give you that soft warning. And then if you switch it back, you'll see you don't get that warning and it does meet code. And then you can proceed from there. Some of the other things that we did based on user feedback, a lot of people were complaining about the fact that the ACCA tables are fairly outdated. They really haven't been updated in over 10 years. So home construction has changed quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years with spray foam and higher insulation R values. So we didn't want to complicate the user interface with being able to have to create custom wall assemblies and ceiling assemblies. We felt people would probably do that incorrectly because there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just the insulation value that's between the studs in a wall. You have to kind of layer all the different components of a wall. So what we did instead is we just expanded out the ACCA table. So now you'll find much larger R values within walls and specifically ceilings and floors than the previous version of Cool Calc, which should handle almost every scenario out there. If there's still situations where you feel that the R values are not sufficient, reach out to us. It's pretty easy for us to expand them further at this point. So I'm going to click the proceed button and get to the next step. This is really what we've spent the majority of our investment in development time over the last couple of years. It's the redesigned dimensional sources. We previously allowed two different methods for getting dimensional data on a home. One was to trace a house from a top-down satellite view of Google. We were the first ones to do that. And the other one was to manually go measure and enter through our text editor. We now have 4 different ways to do that. We still have the satellite trace, so that feature is still there, but it has been improved. I'm going to show you that. We now, for new construction, allow you to import floor plans as well, and we can quickly trace over those. I'll go over that in a future video. LiDAR scanning, that is kind of the new hot thing that everybody's looking at. We now have a free Cool Calc scan app in the iOS store. It does require an iPad Pro or an iPhone Pro 12 or above in order to use it. But if you do that, it allows you to walk around with that iPhone or iPad, scan a house, just holding up your camera and via the LiDAR sensor. It will build a whole 3D model of the home and then import it into Cool Calc in order to complete the entire load calc on it. So great option for existing homes when you do need a room by room breakdown. Satellite trace is great for maybe virtual selling or retrofits where you don't need a room by room. You're not intending to touch ductwork. You don't need multi-head breakdowns on mini splits. You just want to know that the outdoor unit is sized appropriately. Satellite trace is always going to be the fastest way to do that. Floor plan uploads are great for new construction. And then we also offer free drawing, which is helpful sometimes when maybe you have the satellite trace, but not all of the latest additions on a house may not be reflected on the satellite trace because it's not live. You can always free draw if you need to. So when we proceed, just like the previous application, I'm going to select satellite trace and it's going to walk you through. This is a little different now. What we do is we still allow you to zoom in on the house, but we added 2 new controls on the top left-hand corner here. They're rotate buttons. And the reason we want to do this is we allow you to rotate the house to an easier angle to draw on. It's always easier to draw 90-degree angles rather than some arbitrary 30, 45-degree angle, especially when you get into drawing ductwork. And we'll cover that in a future video, but you'll see the reason why you want to try to get the angle of the house when you take a snapshot of it to be an easy angle to draw. The program's going to automatically remember the original orientation and make all the appropriate adjustments, so you don't have to worry about changing anything or remembering which way is north or south. It's going to automatically do that. This is just to make your life easier when you're looking to draw. When you're happy with the zoom level and the rotation of the map, you just want to click this take snapshot, confirm everything looks good, click use this image, and now this becomes the background image of your drawing. This tool is going to look a little different than what we had before. Previously, we were using a third-party library in order to trace over the map. It worked well for us for a long period of time, but it did have limitations. We didn't control it. We were somewhat, held to whatever that particular library owner did going forward. And now we have complete control over this. We built this drawing tool from the ground up. It's web-based, it works on any device, and we have full control over the experience going forward. You'll be prompted here to start drawing. So you just want to click this wall icon. And once you click that, you're going to be able to trace just like you could on the legacy version of Cool Calc. You always want to trace just inside the roof line. That's because when you're looking at a top-down satellite view, it's going to be overstated for gutters, overhangs, things like that. And even 12, 14 inches all the way around can make a big impact when you add it up on a larger home. So you always want to trace just inside the roof line. And you want to continue around, just click where you want to drop a point. You'll see it snap, and you want to trace the area of an entire level. If you look at this icon in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that it walks you through each level, and it did that in the previous version. It starts with the basement, it has you trace the living area of the basement, and then when you're happy with that, you proceed to next level. One thing that is different is we decided to take a different approach when it comes to windows. The previous version of Cool Calc allowed you, or just actually automatically added windows. It would add about 10% glass to wall area ratio in below ground levels and about 15% in above ground levels. And we gave you the ability to just quickly change that. You could say I want it to be a low amount of windows, medium, high, or add custom windows. We found that we got more tickets around that than compliments on how that was structured. A lot of people, it wasn't intuitive where to go to edit windows. They would just see all these windows on their report and didn't remember adding them, and there was a lot of confusion. So what we did is we decided to take a hybrid approach, because Windows is arguably one of the most time-consuming things to go around and do. If you're using a LiDAR scan, it's instant. It gets all the windows and doors automatically. But if you're trying to do something remote, it is something that can take some time. So we decided to take, like I said, a hybrid approach where instead of having you have to click on every wall and add all your windows manually, we have these shortcuts that allow you to just add quickly a small, medium, large, custom single glass door, double glass door to a house. So if I come down here and want to add a double glass door right here, and I want to add a couple standard windows in the basement, I can do that. When I'm happy with my basement layout, I click proceed to level 1. You will get a validation warning. We do this just to prevent people from skipping and forgetting to add windows or doors. So I added windows, but I didn't add any doors to this particular level. So it just gave me a warning on that. I don't want to add any doors. I'm just going to proceed to level 1. It's not going to stop me. This is pretty cool. One of the things that was a limitation on the old application is you had to trace every floor independently, and inevitably you weren't going to ever trace them perfectly, and you're always going to end up with these extra little, I call them slivers of floor area or ceiling area that would show up on your report, and it's just because things didn't line up on a trace. We eliminated that with this version, where we give you this prompt at the bottom asking if you want to copy the walls from the basement level to level 1, which makes sure that all of these walls perfectly line up over the walls below. You can still add to it. So if I wanted to come in here and add this section, I could. I can make a change. If I need to delete a wall, I can click on the wall and you'll see a little delete icon and I can delete it. Alternatively, if you need to move a corner, you can zoom in and you can move a corner. If you want to move an entire wall, instead of clicking on a corner, you can highlight over a wall and you can move that entire wall, so that moves both corners at the same time. So much improved from a drawing standpoint. With the current or legacy application, we always had you just exclude unconditioned spaces like garages. Now we actually want you to include them. By default, the program assumes that all rooms are conditioned, meaning heated or cooled, unless you tell it otherwise. To change something to unconditioned, you want to click on that room, and there's a little toggle right here, is conditioned space, change to no, and then pick the type of space. I'm going to pick garage under living space. It's going to automatically tell you the temperatures, and these change by region of the country, that garage is in the winter and the summer. If you hit save, it now marks that as unconditioned. Just like we did on the basement, you can come in and add exterior doors. You can add custom windows. If I don't like the small, medium, large ones, I can come in here, create a custom window, and then I can go around and I can add all my windows to a particular house real quick. So I'm just going to come in here and do that. And I'm going to come in and add a glass door as well. The one other tool that we didn't touch on is this divider tool. So when you're doing a block load, you're usually not going to draw all your internal rooms. You're going to want to use one of our other tools to do that, like the LiDAR scan or a floor plan trace or even free draw. Usually when you're doing a satellite map trace, you're not necessarily drawing individual rooms because you can't see the individual rooms. But this divider tool is really helpful to separate two spaces within a particular room or a particular floor. And the reason you would want to do that is if part of the floor is served by one system and part is in another, and down the line you want to assign these spaces to different areas. Another reason would be maybe you're doing a multi-zone mini split and you want the report to show these two rooms separately so you can size your indoor head accordingly on that. So that would be the reason you'd want to do the dividers. If you click on a room, you don't like our names, you can rename them. I could call this, main living area, and I could call this, bedrooms. If you're doing a true room by room, we have this space type option where you can click a space type and it will automatically add or suggest internal loads from appliances, lighting, people, etc. for a particular area. If you don't do room by room and you're doing block load, our intention is to add a quick way that you can put a whole allowance of internal loads to the floor. It's just not on the staging site yet. But you can always come in and also select manual appliances to add to a particular level. You want to make sure that you're really only adding appliances that are going to be running either all the time, like fridges, or things that would most likely be running around peak load, which is 6 p.m. on a summer evening in most places. And you can add occupants. We always recommend adding occupants based on number of bedrooms plus one. We usually also recommend that you place occupants in an area where they likely congregate, like a living room, as opposed to bedrooms. So we try to give warnings and validations when people do something that is outside of the norm of what's suggested. All right, so let's go forward with level 2. I'm just going to skip. I'm not going to go through and show you guys. I think it's pretty self-explanatory how this all works. And then the next step would be the attic. This is new. We used to not have you trace the attic. We're going to have a quick way where it actually auto traces this, but we do need the attic space more so to determine the right ceiling loads if the attic is not entirely over the uppermost living space floor, or for the purposes of drawing ductwork. A lot of times ductwork could be in an attic and we need a place to be able to do that. Most of the time you're just going to copy the walls and then proceed. This part is new, where we proceed to floors. I'll show you that, but before we go forward, I wanted to touch on a few other icons. One is this reset drawing icon. If at any point you want to wipe out the entire dimensions section and start over, maybe you started with map trace and then said, you know what, I have a LiDAR scan, I want to import that instead, or a set of plans. You can completely wipe it out and it will get you back to that screen where you can choose your import method from there. The other icon is the layer icon. This is where you can hide things like the background when you're done with the map trace. If it's being confusing and adding complexity to it. You can also, if you're on another level, you can hide the footprint of the floor below it, and we use that as reference. You can hide the grid, you can hide the measurements, you can hide what's identified as a conditioned space or not. So there's a lot of capabilities there. There's also a fit to screen icon and then a zoom icon. So that's just a quick overview. We already covered all of the drawing tools. In the left-hand corner here, there's 3 different modes. This is not new. They used to just be radio buttons on the top right-hand corner of the map that allowed you to toggle between wall mode, floor mode, ceiling mode. Most people didn't know those existed, so we decided to actually walk you through each one. So when I proceed past my level 2 in my attic, the first thing we're going to do is show you the floor mode and say we've detected this floor load. We've automatically assigned it the right profile. It's a basement floor. You shouldn't have to really do anything here. This is more informational purposes only. If you proceed to level 1, we also detected another floor load on the first floor over the garage, and we automatically assigned it the correct construction feature group. And then if you proceed to ceilings, we automatically detected the ceiling area over the entire second floor, and you can add skylights. This is where you do that, which wasn't always intuitive before. You had to click the radio button to go to ceilings, and then you had to click on the ceiling, click show more, add skylights. It was a number of steps. So we tried to make that easier. Most of the time you don't have to do anything on those screens. They're more informational. When we click proceed, this is new. We previously had a screen on the HVAC system step that said rooms in system and allowed you to kind of check off all of the rooms that belong to a particular system. We decided to make that graphical, and we decided to also add the ability to not only assign rooms to a system, but add zones and add rooms to a zone. That will become evident why we did that when we get into some of our duct design tools down the line. And also, it's helpful on the report to see the breakdown by zone. We are going to add the ability to kind of skip over this and do this a lot quicker if there's only one system, one zone in a particular house. But in the case of this one, I'm just going to say there's 2 zones, and I'm going to hit save. We previously only allowed you to control indoor design temps at the system level. Now we allow you to do it at the zone level. The reason we did that is a lot of people keep the basement zone at a different temperature than the first floor zone. For example, you may keep the basement at 65 degrees and the first floor at 75 degrees. So we want to give you that control, and we'll automatically calculate behind the scenes the mixed air temps on that. What you do now is just over here, click the plus button to add all of the rooms that belong to zone 1. So I'm going to put my basement on zone 1, and then I'm going to proceed to zone 2, and I'm going to put my first floor rooms on zone 2. I'm going to keep level 2, that's going to be part of a different system, so I'm going to not include that. I only need to click the rooms that are belonging to the work scope I'm on, which is the basement system. And then I'm going to proceed to the next step. The very last step is just optional ancillary accessory loads. You can add things like a humidifier to a house or a fresh air intake, and we'll do the appropriate calculations. If you don't have any ancillary loads you need to add, you're done. You just click proceed, and you're going to get to your manual J. If you don't have a subscription with us, you have 2 choices. You can either pay per project, or you can subscribe to get unlimited projects per month. So this is a little bit different model. We found that there was a number of people that do less than 10 a year that really like the fact that we have a pay-per-use, and then there's a number of people that do more than that, that financially it just makes sense to have a monthly subscription. And we tried to price our monthly subscriptions to be very, very accessible compared to other options in the market, especially given the fact that we offer LiDAR, new construction floor plan imports, the fact that you can use it on any device that has an internet connection and does not require, expensive devices or like iPad Pros and things like that. So if I subscribe, I'm going to be prompted here. We're on a test beta site, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to type in anything. And subscribe, why not? Once I subscribe, I can go back to my project and view my report. The report itself, I feel, is improved. We've added a few areas. We always had the component load breakdowns and kind of the summary at the top. Now we've added a room breakdown, so you can look. I did block load, so I'm only going to have basement and the 2 rooms that I did on my first level. We improved quite a bit the naming convention of all of this. If I named all my rooms, I would actually see like kitchen east wall window, and I'd be able to see all that. You can drill all the way down to see the exact construction of everything. You can choose to view the report fully expanded or fully collapsed, and then you can download a homeowner friendly version of the report as well, or something to print out to an inspector. We added a zone summary section, so this is helpful if you do add zones. You can see the breakdown by zone, and then we added individual room summaries, which we always had before with the individual graphs, which are a good. If people don't know what these AEG graphs are, they basically will tell you when there's spikes at certain times of the day and if zoning is recommended for your particular situation. So that's it from a general overview of at least the manual J portion of satellite tracing. I will cover some of the other dimensional sources in another video, just because I don't want to make this one too long. I'll also cover Manual S and Manual D, which are both added as part of this new release. So thank you.